Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
We always seem to learn a lot of secrets that maybe some people didn't want things to get out at the NFL owners meetings. There's tons of people talking. The media is there. Again, you find out lots of just little interesting secrets and tidbits about what is to happen during the NFL draft season and just the new season that will be upon us before we know it. And I am super excited because down in Florida, we will bring in our very own Andrew Mason. Mace, how is Florida?
Warm, sunny, a little bit windy the last couple of days, but it's been generally beautiful. I mean, you guys have the snow up there, and it's the only snowfall here is sunshine. You don't. They always say you don't have to shovel sunshine.
Rubbing it in my face for sure, and you're also rubbing in my face just a little bit that you got a lot of very interesting tidbits of information, having a lot of conversations with Sean Payton, George Payton, Damani Leach, and there's a ton to dive into, but I first want to start with Sean Payton and the most interesting thing that you found out of yesterday.
I mean, I think the most interesting thing was the individual workout with JJ McCarthy and how they did it. It was very interesting. It was give credit to our own Cecil Lammey, who was there and asked a question about what you're trying to learn from a quarterback in their pro day. And so Sean talks about how you're learning things about what they're doing, like not just throwing, but how they're interacting with teammates, what kind of leader they are, that sort of thing. And then he starts talking about how they had JJ McCarthy for a private workout on Saturday, one day after his Michigan pro day. They sent him a whole mess of information to see how much he could get down by Saturday. I love the idea, by the way, of doing it then because, pro day is a great day for a top prospect. Typically it's, they're the star of the show. You get a chance to show off. Most quarterbacks especially do really well at their pro days. And usually it's just kind of a coronation, right? So it's a high point for that player. What do you do next? And it's a question that you have about any player when they get to the pros. What do you do? Do you rest on your laurels or do you keep attacking? And that, I think, is part of the strategy of the Broncos doing the individual day with JJ McCarthy one day later. But the thing about it is, it came 1 minute and 23 seconds into a response talking about pro day. So it was very much Sean Payton in kind of riff mode, right? He's just telling a story. I don't think they wanted that I don't think other people with the Broncos wanted that one to get out the way it did. But Sean just expounds. Yeah, that was a latte moment, no doubt.
Too many lattes. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. And I found it to be very interesting because then George Payton had talked and, the way he made it sound is he's like, oh, there will, of course, be a good player at number 12 or we'll move back. And James Merrill and I talked about it yesterday. There seems to be so many, conflicting reports. And I was like, are they trying to have a smoke screen, to not have which way you're going to go? But we all know Sean Payton has one too many lattes every once in a while, and then things spill. So I always tend to lead more to what Sean says than what George says.
Yeah, and ultimately, if there's a tie, it's probably going to be broken in favor of Sean Payton, or it's going to be someone like Greg Penner saying, we're going in this direction. They obviously want to get a consensus and get everybody on board with decisions. And by and large, Greg Penner is going to default to, what Sean and George decide together. Yep. But when we're talking about a quarterback here, this is one of those franchise, defining moves that, especially if you move up, you got to have everybody on board. George Payton, he's more cautious. He believes in the more dart strategy. He likes to trade down and accumulate more picks. What the Broncos did in the third round of 2021, taking 1 third rounder, turning it into 2, and getting Baron Browning and Quinn Miners, that's George Payton doing what he wants to do and doing it very well. That's the best example of success with that strategy. Sean Payton, on the other hand, The Riley Moss trade, moving up, sacrificing a 3rd-round pick this year to get Riley Moss last year, that's a Sean Payton move. And Sean in New Orleans made those moves all the time, along with his GM, Mickey Loomis, to the point where nobody had fewer picks in those 16 years that Sean Payton coached the Saints. Nobody had fewer picks than the Saints by a full 1 pick per year average. Think about that for a moment. So you have these two philosophies that are just kind of ramming into each other here. And that's where I do wonder. And I was talking about this with Cecil earlier today. Sometimes we'll just sit around and we'll just kind of brainstorm a little bit. What if maybe Bo Nix kind of becomes the compromise? That you don't have to trade up and you get your quarterback.
You get your quarterback. You get a little bit of an older quarterback. What are the bigger pros for JJ than there is for Bo Nix? Like, I feel like that's one of those questions. The draft stock for JJ just obviously skyrocketed after the combine, but it's like, well, what's the bigger pro for JJ over somebody like Bo Nix?
He's got more arm talent. There are more throws that he can make. I mean, he doesn't have the arm talent of Drake May. If we're measuring arm talent, it's May, McCarthy, Nix.
Yeah.
Bo Nix will be able to get you 85% of the throws, and he's going to keep you on rhythm. He's going to be able to lead the receivers, which is going to set you up for some yardage after the catch opportunities. But when you're talking about that 25-yard out, that 35-yard out, McCarthy isn't where May is, and Nix isn't where McCarthy is. And McCarthy actually, when it comes to that 35-yard out, he can generally get there going to the right. It's a little bit tricky going to the left side.
Yeah.
So, whereas Drake May, I mean, he's just got a howitzer and he can just fling it wherever. Like that's, if vertical arm talent is what you're looking for among these three, it's Drake May. But we also know Sean Payton prizes accuracy. Bo Nix is an exceptionally accurate quarterback, short to intermediate. With Bo Nix, you're not talking about booted screen passes that are, high or low like we saw last year from time to time with Russell Wilson. Bo's going to have that thing on point, on target.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's interesting because at Bo Nix's pro day, there was George Payton wasn't out there. I think the Broncos had a few scouts out there, but of course everyone was like, oh, where's George Payton? It was during free agency. A lot was going on. It didn't make sense for the timing when they did their pro day compared to a lot of other guys who we're going to be seeing Wednesday through Thursday this week.
Although we do know that Sean Payton has met with Bo Nix because Bo Nix was talking about Sean Payton on Colin Cowherd. Now, of course, they had the meeting at the combine, right? And that's what he was referring to. Bo said that Sean Payton asked him what his shoe size was.
Oh my gosh! Wait, I did not see that clip.
Yeah, it was a few days ago. I think it's out there. So we were talking about it. I was talking about it with Mike Evans and Mark Schlereth this morning on the morning show, and of course, then Bo Nix answered size 13, and then Mark Schlereth went and researched Drew Brees' shoe size and said, hey, Drew Brees was a size 13 too.
Oh my gosh. It just makes me go back to the Kenny Pickett measuring of the hands, right?
Yeah.
It brings back all of those memories, and obviously we see how the Kenny Pickett era ended up going with the Steelers. But yes, I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. Were there any other names that Sean Payton did even drop a little bit? He's obviously dropped McCarthy's name a ton. Have there been any other quarterback names that he's dropped?
Well, Caleb Williams back in the fall of 2022 when he was working as a broadcaster, when he said that the NFL should consider a draft lottery system to prevent teams from openly tanking for Caleb Williams. That's how good he was as a prospect. But aside from that, McCarthy was the only prospect name dropped yesterday. And I think, I don't think there was intent. Like there's some saying, oh, well, maybe he's just trying to, throw people off the scent, smoke screen, whatever. I don't think that was the case here. I think this was more Sean kind of getting going, getting on a roll. He likes to tell some stories. Like if you trip his trigger with a topic, he will expound. He likes talking ball. right?
does.
I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes that means a few nuggets get out that maybe weren't supposed to get out, like that. So, but and I think the reason. So why bring up JJ McCarthy? It's because that's where they were literally before they came to Orlando for the league meetings. The last thing they did was have the workout with JJ McCarthy, and then they came down here, and then it's back on the pro day circuit after the meetings end today. Jaden Daniels, LSU tomorrow, Drake May on Thursday at North Carolina, and we'll see what kind of representation what the Broncos have. But as we learned last Friday, just because Sean Payton is there doesn't mean they haven't got something cooking. Like that was a story like, oh, George Payton was there. Why wasn't Sean Payton there? Well, turned out they had something bigger and better in the works, which was getting the 4 to 5 hours of actual one-on-one time with JJ McCarthy.
Well, and Sean Payton, thanks to you, Mace, we have a clip from Sean yesterday for this conversation. But it also seemed like he gave a hint to where the Broncos could possibly moving up when he mentions a certain GM. And we will play that clip right now. Take a listen.
I think that's realistic. I think it's realistic. I know your report suggested otherwise, but it's realistic.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, it did. I would. I think it's realistic. What's hard to predict, though, is like what's on the receiving end. You know, I think it's good to be Monty today at Arizona, right? So it's hard to predict what that cost is, and yet I certainly wouldn't say it's unrealistic, and we'll pay close attention to it.
You can just tell that his brain is turning every single word that's coming out of his mouth. But it's fascinating that he mentions Monty from Arizona, because that clearly was at the top of their mind, or his mind, with the number 4th pick overall, Mace.
Yeah, and there's a little bit going on there. Why would you put that out there? To simply maybe you've had a conversation with Monty Ellison Ford at some point, but it's a little reminder, hey, if other teams call, don't make a deal unless you check with us to see kind of where we're willing to go in a deal. And then the other thing that's interesting about Thor is this. You may not assure yourself of JJ McCarthy, but you would, assuming Jaden Daniels goes at number 2 to Washington or goes at 3, you would guarantee yourself McCarthy or May. So if you go to 4, that may be a signal that you're happy, you love either one of them, and you're happy with whoever is there. Yeah. If you wanted to guarantee yourself one or the other, and I know there are rumblings, I know NFL Network put something out there, maybe the Commanders are going for JJ McCarthy. I think that's a smokescreen. I think the Commanders are sticking with Jaden Daniels at number 2. So
we had that conversation here too, how that just seems unrealistic in so many ways.
Yeah. And the other thing is on Jaden Daniels, because he's at LSU and Sean Payton and his staff, they're really plugged in with LSU. They've got all the information and intel they need on Jaden Daniels. There's the least work that has to be done on him in terms of, I'm going to sound like Sean, relative to draft preparation, because Sean likes to say relative to. I actually was going to go back and count yesterday the number of times he said relative to in the course of his 37.5-minute question and answer session. So that was another thing. It was scheduled for 30 minutes. He went for 37.5 minutes.
I heard he didn't go to a dinner the night before, though.
The dinner, well, I mean, what do you mean? Like a dinner with the team staff or what? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I heard that there was like a coach's dinner that Sean Payton did not attend.
Oh, no, he didn't I know that he didn't do the photo session.
Yeah.
They had a photo. Now
Which
part of
why I'm like,
okay,
you have to sit around for an extra 5 minutes or like what?
In this case, normally the photo is on a Monday at lunch at the meetings. This year they had it on a Sunday. I think with Sean, he simply didn't necessarily look at the schedule and just because you get into a routine, you come to this thing every year, and usually the beats and the rhythm are the same. Like the coaches and GMs always do their photos at lunch on Monday because like the way that has worked for the Broncos, for example, is when they would do those photos, that's usually when we would get the GM, whether it was John Elway or George Payton, we usually get them after the GM and coach photos. Well, they kind of threw a wrench in that this year, right? So I think that is as simple as he just thought it was at another time. Like Mike Tomlin wasn't in the photo as well, for example. So that's
maybe they were talking about Russell Wilson.
I do wonder
if they throw that one out there.
I do wonder if they had a conversation about Russ like that.
They've had to.
Yeah.
Two of the coaches that have been in the NFL for the longest, and now you're sharing, or you have the quarterback from one team to another. There has to be some conversations. That would be
interesting. I mean, what do you talk about? Like, hey, what worked for us? What didn't work for us? What's he like in the locker room? What's he like? I mean,
what do you think about all the videos that Russ posts during wearing his Hollywood shades while he's working out inside? I'm just very curious. There's plenty to dive into with Russell Wilson.
He's back to posting videos again, isn't he?
He is back to it.
The embargo is done.
Which I will give credit to Russell Wilson because he clearly took what Sean Payton said and said, we're done doing this because we didn't see any of it. Even if he liked it, he was respecting his head coach enough to be like, okay, whatever, we won't post any of them. Now that he's like a free bird again, he's like, all right, let me show you off. So I will give a little bit of credit to Russ that clearly he tried to make it work on that front right there, but just the divorce needed to happen regardless. I am curious though, Mace, the biggest news that dropped today has been one of the biggest changes we've seen in the NFL in a really long time, and it's the new kickoff rule. People are not happy about it, quote unquote, calling the NFL soft. What's your immediate reaction to it?
I love it.
Oh, man. I did not expect that.
No, I love it. I love it because it makes the kickoff matter again. Like what the kickoff has become over time, as there was no incentive to do anything other than just blast it out of the end zone. It's become a play where, by and large, you take that extra few minutes to get yourself a snack in the kitchen or you go to the bathroom. You don't feel like you have to be back. And sometimes if you've got the stoppages working a certain way, you'll go commercial, kickoff, commercial. Like on that's sort of a deadly moment. And then you can take a nice long, like 5-minute break, basically. I love this. I've watched this type of kickoff. It's not exactly the same, but similar in the XFL. It's brought it back into play. It's made the play matter again. I'm all for this. It's the kickoff. The kickoff is an exciting play. Punt returns are exciting plays. Like that's the thing. Like special teams can be exciting and can change games. I mean, it was a negative special teams play, but look at how the punt that bounced off the leg changed the Super Bowl. I mean, for all this, Patrick Mahomes, this, that, and the other. Kansas City doesn't win that game if they don't get a huge break on a punt return and Christian McCaffrey doesn't fumble, right? Then we're talking. So is Brock Purdy a loser because these things? No, I mean that's why I'm just like some of the reductive QB win-loss stuff is ridiculous to me. But I'm all for this. I mean, they had to try something different. It's going to be a 1-year trial. The compromise that was made was the penalty for kicking it in, having it be a touchback on the fly into the end zone. Now it's out to the 30 rather than the 35. So I wish it had stayed at the 35 rather than the 30. I'm not sure that's punitive enough because, because with Marvin Mims Jr., he's so dangerous. I think you're still going to see teams that say 30-yard line instead of taking the risk of him breaking it on us. Blast it between the uprights there, Justin Tucker or whichever kicker you're talking about.
It's interesting to me because first of all, I'm one of those people that I don't really love change, so maybe that's why I'm so anti this at the moment. I've seen what the XFL has done, and to be honest, I do have a lot of really good rules, it feels like, that makes the game a little bit more entertaining for the viewer. And I do agree that the kickoff has been completely boring, but it just feels like there's some parts of it where I'm like, is it just gonna lessen? I don't know. I don't know, Mace. I don't know what my issue with it is, besides the fact that it just feels like it took away somebody getting blasted. And I know that's what they were trying to stop. And I know that sounds bad, but how many times are we like, oh my gosh, that dude absolutely just got annihilated? Or there could be a tiny, touch, and then all of a sudden we're all freaking out because the ball is loose or something like that. And I know that can still happen, but it doesn't happen, I feel like, at the same rate now. If that makes any sense at all.
It does, yeah. I think that actually makes a lot of sense, what you're saying. So
it just feels like it took away, one of the things that, while it may be boring some percent of the time, it can be really, really exciting another part of the time. And now it's like, what's it going to look like? Are we going to see a little bit more excitement, moving up to like the 20% amount of time now, with the 80% still being a little bit boring, or just how is it going to play out? I'll be interested to see kind of what this looks like. Same with the hip dip or whatever rule it is too. I think we're going to see a lot more flags.
Yeah, look, I like the kickoff change in part because, like, the other thing that you're taking out is the full speed collisions, like, guys running full speed 40 yards down the field, and that's why kickoffs were a dangerous play. So how do you make it competitive and take something that has a high injury rate out of it?
Yeah.
The hip drop, the thing is, what you're starting to get to a point where you're asking the impossible of defenders, and I think the interesting thing here is, can a 190-pound safety or a 185-pound safety make a tackle downfield with a pass catch coming at full speed without the hip drop? Probably not. I mean, you're going to see flags, but also I think you may. It's actually interesting to think about what happened this offseason with safeties, and all of a sudden they didn't get paid.
Yep.
But now all of a sudden, like, if you can get a 220-pound safety you can cover and make a tackle without the hip drop, then that may become the unicorn that you're willing to pay an awful lot for, because because you're going to probably have to sacrifice speed for size. Like, now someone like JL Skinner, 6'4", 220 on the Broncos, he may end up having a huge future, because you may need a bigger guy because he can make a tackle without the hip drop.
Well, it just also makes me think back to Kareem Jackson last year, where so many flags, fines, suspensions. It's like, how is the NFL going to give this a few seasons before we really start seeing some suspensions or fines that come along with this? These are players that have grown up playing this way for their entire lives, entire careers, and now it's going to get taken away. I seriously anticipate flags almost like every other play, which I think is just going to frustrate so many people.
I think so as well. And now, sometimes with these calls, they throw so many flags and they end up kind of rearing it back in, right? So I want to see how the adjudication of this looks in week 5 compared to week 1.
Yeah.
That's going to be something to monitor, to see if they call this frequently, and then you get to week 5 and either there's a correction or they're just saying, we got to rein this in a little bit. It's messing things up. But again, it's funny. Like, almost every rule change is about scoring. Like, part of the reason for the kickoff change is they feel like it'll make it a more viable play, and also because field position is expected to increase for the offense. Every yard of field position translates over time to a greater chance of points. So this is another thing. The league's scoring has declined from its 2020 peak, the COVID peak of 49 total points a game. It's down by about 6 points from that peak. So you put the hip drop tackling, you make it harder for safeties to operate. You put the kickoff rule in, you maybe add a few yards of field position. It's always about offense. I mean,
true. It is.
Help the defense out from time to time is what I'm saying. But that's the thing. This is not something new, Rachel. This is going back nearly 5 decades. I mean, the big rule changes in 1978 that banned that created the illegal contact within 5 yard, beyond 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. It was designed to open up the offense, open up the passing game. And really, there's like in football, there's like pre-1978 and post-1978 in terms of how the game has evolved. And this is just another thing. And always, basically, since 1978, basically every change is about offense, points. It's a great. We may be talking about, and who knows, in 10 years, Rachel, we may be talking about a defense that's truly transcendent, and they give up 20 points a game.
True.
Crazy.
Honestly, it is. And Mace, last one for you. Justin Simmons still has not found his next team. Is it? And it has nothing to do with talent. Justin Simmons was phenomenal, obviously, last year for the Broncos. Is it because of money? Is it because of fit? What is the reason we have not seen Justin Simmons sign anywhere?
He is a victim of being part of a glut of safeties on the market, and the league now valuing safeties again. I think this might change, at least for elite level safeties, in the wake of this hip drop tackle. So let's see what happens in the next couple of years if this rule persists. But right now, he is the victim of a change in how safeties are valued. Part of it is because you see more shell coverage. These are the Vic Fangio concepts that are propagating throughout the league. You can find a lot more safeties to play to basically concede the underneath stuff and not allow anything deep. This, unfortunately, is working against not only Justin Simmons, it worked against Jamal Adams was let go in Seattle. Seattle let go of both their safeties. Jordan Poyer let go in Buffalo. Safety has become what running back was in terms of the value of it on the market is plummeting.
Yep. Oh, poor Justin Simmons.
It's sad. I mean, it was funny because George Payton mentioned him yesterday and said that they released him just so they could get a jump on the market.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here, we're about to be 3 weeks from him being cut, and nothing's happened. I mean, he's going to have to take a real cheap deal. I mean, it's at the point where almost, if you're the Broncos, do you even call him back?
Pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, you want to come play again?"
Yeah, I doubt they will. They feel like they've got their combo in Brandon Jones and PJ Locke with hopes that Caden Stearns can stay healthy as well. They still like him. And then I mentioned JL Skinner earlier in this show as someone that they're intrigued by long term. So the Broncos Express has moved down the track. Justin Simmons won't be coming back.
Oh, still a bummer.
Sorry.
If you're a Broncos fan. All right, Andrew Mason, as always, a pleasure. Safe travels back home.
Check
out Orange and Blue today, 4 p.m. every single day. Plus, they've been doing extra episodes. You can find them on our YouTube page. Plenty of good stuff from him and Cecil, as well as everybody writing over at denversports.com. So please make sure you check it out. They keep you up to date on everything happening in the Denver sports world. I appreciate you all hanging out with us here on this Tuesday. And get back to work, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye.